The sun rose gently over the rolling farmland, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. A thin layer of mist clung to the grass, and the air carried the fresh scent of earth and dew. Birds sang from fence posts and hedgerows, filling the morning with a sense of calm familiarity. It was the kind of day that promised hard work, but also the steady rhythm of a life close to nature. In the distance, the farmer prepared his equipment. His tractor stood ready by the barn, its engine cleaned and refueled the evening before. The tall meadow, thick with summer grass, awaited its turn to be trimmed and harvested. He tightened his gloves, adjusted his hat, and glanced out at the wide field that stretched like a green sea before him. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, just another day of labor under the open sky. The family's dog padded nearby, tail wagging, while chickens scratched idly in the dirt beside the barn. The farmer's thoughts were simple and practical. How many hours it might take to finish the field, whether the weather would hold steady, and if the ground was dry enough to bear the tractor's weight without getting bogged down. Unbeknownst to him, beneath that calm landscape lay danger. The tall grass concealed more than roots and soil. It hid a fragile weakness, waiting for the right weight to collapse. Yet for the moment, the farmer was unaware, caught in the gentle rhythm of his morning routine. It was the kind of scene where nothing seemed urgent, nothing seemed threatening, the kind of beginning that lulls one into believing the day will be as ordinary as all the others, until the first sign from nature would change everything. The farmer had just climbed onto his tractor seat, adjusting the levers and listening to the low hum of the engine as it warmed. The meadow lay open before him, its green expanse shifting gently with the morning breeze, but as he prepared to ease the machine forward, a shadow flickered across the grass. He paused, lifting his head. High above, a hawk circled, its wings stretched wide, glinting as they caught the light of the rising sun. Normally, a hawk's flight was smooth, elegant, and purposeful, a steady wheel in the sky. But this one was different. Its circling was tight, repetitive, almost agitated, as if tethered to an invisible point on the ground. The farmer leaned back in his seat, narrowing his eyes. Hawks did hover and circle when they had spotted prey, but this one's behavior was unusual. It wasn't scanning a wide area, nor did it dive. Instead, it spiraled again and again over the same patch of the meadow. Each sweep of its wings brought it lower, its piercing cry cutting through the quiet morning air. At first, the farmer chuckled softly, thinking perhaps the bird was frustrated by a rabbit hiding in the tall grass. Still, something about its persistence gnawed at him. Even the dog, usually indifferent to birds overhead, barked and whined as though unsettled by the hawk's behavior. The farmer turned off the tractor engine, the sudden silence making the bird's calls sharper, more urgent. He stepped down and shaded his eyes, watching. The hawk rose a few feet higher and then dropped back into its circling, always over that same stretch of meadow. It was not the flight of a hunter. It was the restless motion of a sentinel, drawing attention to something unseen. In that moment, a thought stirred in the farmer's mind. Perhaps the hawk was not hunting at all, but warning. The farmer hesitated at the edge of the tractor, his boots pressing into the damp earth. The hawk still circled above, its shrill cry echoing across the meadow like an urgent alarm. He glanced once more at the patch of grass beneath the bird's orbit. It looked no different from the rest of the field, just a swath of green bending gently in the wind. Yet something inside him stirred with unease. He called his dog to heel, the animal whining and tugging against his voice, as though it too sensed something strange ahead. Step by step, the farmer walked forward, every movement cautious, his eyes fixed on the spot the hawk refused to leave. As he drew closer, he noticed subtle differences. The grass there seemed less anchored, almost sagging compared to the sturdier blades around it. The soil beneath appeared darker, damp in places where no irrigation line ran. He bent slightly, resting a hand on his knee, scanning the ground more intently. The hawk's movements grew sharper. It dipped lower, wings beating faster, before wheeling back up again. The message was clear. Look here. The farmer took another tentative step, then another. Suddenly he felt it, the faint give of the earth beneath his boot. Not much, but enough to send a shiver up his spine. He quickly shifted his weight back, retreating a pace, his heart pounding. He crouched, reached for a long stick lying nearby, and gently prodded the ground ahead. The soil trembled and crumbled more easily than it should have. When he pressed harder, a small section gave way, a hollow sound rising from beneath the surface. The truth struck him at once. This wasn't solid ground at all. Something dangerous lay beneath. Above, the hawk let out a piercing screech, as if to confirm his discovery. The meadow was not as safe as it seemed. The farmer's breath caught as the stick plunged deeper into the soil than expected. With a sharp crack, the ground gave way further, a jagged fissure spreading across the patch of grass. Clods of dirt tumbled inward, vanishing into a darkness that seemed to breathe beneath the earth. He steadied himself, gripping the stick tightly, and peered closer. Beneath the thin layer of grass and dirt was nothing but empty space, a cavern of loose soil and eroded stone. The hollow chamber yawned below, large enough to swallow a grown man, let alone the heavy weight of his tractor. A chill ran down his spine as he realized how close he had come to driving straight across it. His machine would not have stood a chance. The earth would have collapsed instantly, dragging iron, fuel, and himself into the depths. The hawk circled lower now, almost triumphantly, as if its task was nearly done. Its sharp eyes followed the farmer's every movement, wings glinting in the late sunlight. He could not shake the feeling that without this bird's persistent warning, disaster would already have struck. Kneeling at the edge, he pushed back more of the loose dirt with the stick, revealing the sinkhole's fragile rim. The edges crumbled with the slightest pressure, whispering of how unstable it was. The hollow stretched wider than he had guessed, an unseen scar running beneath the meadow. He stepped back quickly, heart pounding, realizing the field he had trusted for years had been hiding this silent trap. The sound of the hawk's cry rang in his ears like a final confirmation. This discovery had not been chance. It had been a warning. The meadow was no longer just land to plow. It was a hidden danger, waiting to claim anything that crossed it. The farmer backed away from the fragile rim of the sinkhole, his boots crunching nervously against the brittle earth. His heart still thundered, but his thoughts turned quickly from relief to urgency. This was not just his problem. Anyone who wandered into the meadow could be in mortal danger. Children from the nearby village often played here, and his neighbors sometimes crossed the field on their way to the stream. He wiped the dirt from his hands and strode toward his farmhouse, the hawk still circling above as though unwilling to leave its post. Grabbing his old rotary phone from the wall, he dialed the local ranger station. His voice trembled as he explained what had happened. The hawk's persistent circling, his discovery of the hollow beneath the grass, and the frightening instability of the ground. The ranger on the other end of the line listened intently, his tone sharpening with urgency. "Don't let anyone near it," he instructed firmly. "Mark it if you can, but stay well back. We'll send a team right away." Hanging up the phone, the farmer gathered rope, fence posts, and a roll of bright red cloth from his shed. Working quickly, he drove stakes into the ground several feet away from the dangerous rim, tying rope between them to form a makeshift barrier. He hung strips of cloth at intervals, so they fluttered in the wind, a warning flag to anyone approaching. As he worked, a couple of neighbors, curious about the hawk's unusual display and the commotion, arrived at the edge of the field. The farmer raised his hands to stop them. "Stay back," he called. "The ground's giving way. There's a sinkhole under there." The shock on their faces mirrored the dread he still felt in his own chest. Within the hour, the distant rumble of a ranger's truck rolled into the lane. The hawk let out a final cry before soaring away, its duty seemingly complete. The farmer watched it go, deeply unsettled yet grateful, knowing that its strange behavior had forced him to act before disaster struck. The meadow that once symbolized peace and livelihood was now cordoned off, its hidden danger exposed to all. And though his hands still shook, the farmer felt a sense of grim pride. He had sounded the alarm in time. The low growl of the truck engine came first, echoing along the narrow dirt road that bordered the farmer's field. Dust billowed as a Greene County Ranger vehicle pulled up, its headlights cutting through the early evening haze. Two rangers stepped out, their uniforms dusty from the day's work, but their movements sharp and purposeful. One carried a surveying kit slung over his shoulder, the other a coil of safety rope and brightly colored hazard tape. The farmer hurried forward to meet them, his relief almost overwhelming. "It's worse than it looks," he warned, his voice low, as though speaking too loudly might shake the ground apart. He pointed toward the cordoned area where the tall grass swayed above the hidden void. The lead ranger crouched near the edge of the farmer's makeshift barrier, scanning the terrain with a practiced eye. He tapped the earth with his boot heel, listening intently. A dull, hollow thump responded, confirming the farmer's fears. "You did the right thing calling us," the ranger said, "and the right thing keeping people back." From the truck, they retrieved ground-penetrating sensors, metal rods with sensors at the tips, which they carefully drove into the soil at several points around the suspected sinkhole. A handheld monitor flickered with data, its lines trembling with unsettling dips and gaps. "There's a cavity here," the second ranger confirmed, his brow furrowed. "Could be 10 feet deep, maybe more." They laid out ropes, marking a much larger perimeter than the farmer had imagined. "The collapse zone is wider than you think," one explained, motioning for the neighbors, who had gathered at a distance to step back further. Children were ushered away, their wide eyes glancing nervously toward the grass. As the rangers worked, the farmer found himself glancing skyward. The hawk was gone now, its circling complete, as if it knew its silent warning had been heeded. For a brief moment, he wondered what might have happened if he had ignored the bird's unusual behavior. If he had driven his tractor straight into the meadow, the thought left his stomach hollow. By the time twilight settled over the land, the rangers had driven warning stakes deep into the soil and strung heavy tape in bright yellow lines across the field. They promised to return the next morning with excavation equipment and geologists to study the ground beneath. The farmer stood with his neighbors, watching the last streaks of orange light fade across the horizon. His meadow was no longer his own. Now it was a place marked by danger, by a secret hidden in the earth. Yet he knew this. Lives had been spared. The hawk's restless flight had not been in vain. The following morning, the farm was no longer quiet countryside, but a hub of activity. A team of geologists and engineers arrived with heavy equipment, their trucks lined along the dirt road like a convoy. The meadow was cordoned off with bright orange fencing, and the hum of machinery replaced the usual rustle of grass and chirping of meadowlarks. When the ground-penetrating drills finally reached the hollow beneath, the truth was worse than expected. A yawning cavern stretched below the surface, its void carved silently over years by hidden underground water flow. The geologists explained that if the farmer had driven his tractor over that spot, the earth would have given way instantly, swallowing both man and machine into the pit. The farmer stood at the edge of the safe zone, his hat in hand, heart heavy with what might have been. He couldn't stop glancing to the sky, half expecting the hawk to reappear. When it did, late in the morning, its wings outstretched and circling high above, he felt a surge of gratitude so strong it nearly unsteadied him. Word spread quickly through the village and neighboring farms. Families spoke of the hawk as if it were more than just a wild bird, more like a guardian that had chosen to reveal the earth's hidden danger. Children repeated the story at school, their eyes wide with wonder, and elders nodded solemnly, recalling old sayings about animals sensing what humans could not. The farmer himself became the reluctant centerpiece of the tale. Neighbors came by to ask what he had seen, how he had known to call the rangers, how he had understood the hawk's message. Each time, he shook his head and answered humbly, "I didn't know. I just listened." As the sinkhole was filled and stabilized over the following weeks, the meadow remained scarred, a reminder of the fragility that lay beneath the surface of familiar ground. Yet above it, the hawk still returned from time to time, circling in its wide, patient loops. For the farmer and his community, it became more than just a story of averted disaster. It was a parable of attention, of humility, of respecting the subtle signals of the natural world. They understood, in a way they hadn't before, that survival sometimes depended not on strength or planning, but on noticing the overlooked, the restless flight of a bird in the sky, refusing to be ignored. And so, the hawk's circling was remembered not as a random act of nature, but as a turning point, the day the land revealed its secret and a bird's instinct saved lives.